Most people think attraction disappears because of betrayal, conflict, distance, or some dramatic event that clearly explains the change. But that isn't usually how it happens. Most attraction dies quietly. It dies while two people are still talking, while they're still texting, while everything appears normal on the surface. Because attraction has a strange relationship with certainty. The moment someone becomes completely predictable, something subtle begins to shift. You notice replies becoming shorter, conversations becoming easier to end, attention becoming less intentional, presence becoming less noticeable. And the terrifying part is that nobody announces when this process begins. People rarely wake up one morning and decide they are no longer fascinated. Fascination simply loses oxygen. Slowly. Silently. Until one day the emotional atmosphere feels completely different. There is a reason people remember the beginning of relationships so intensely. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was uncertain. Every message mattered. Every glance carried weight. Every interaction contained unanswered questions. You weren't just experiencing a person. You were discovering them. And discovery creates emotional tension. You wonder what they're thinking. You wonder when they'll text. You wonder how they feel. You wonder where you stand. Attention naturally moves toward unanswered questions. Toward mystery. Toward possibility. But eventually something changes. You become available all the time. Reachable all the time. Predictable all the time. Your reactions become known. Your habits become expected. Your presence becomes guaranteed. And guarantees have a strange effect on perception. People stop noticing what they no longer fear losing. At first your message creates excitement. Months later your message creates expectation. Then eventually it creates neither. Not because you became less valuable, but because you became emotionally certain. Attention changes before love admits it. You begin noticing small things. The enthusiasm that used to arrive naturally now feels forced. The curiosity begins disappearing. Questions become updates. Conversations become maintenance. The emotional energy starts feeling different. As if the relationship is surviving on memory rather than momentum. People are fascinated by what they still notice. And people stop noticing what becomes psychologically automatic. You stop hearing a clock after living beside it long enough. You stop noticing a scent after breathing it every day. You stop observing things that never change. The same thing happens emotionally. One of the most painful experiences is realizing somebody has adapted to your presence. They still care. They still respond. They still include you. But they no longer react to you. Those are very different things. You feel it in subtle moments. Moments so small they seem insignificant. Yet somehow they hurt the most. You tell a story and notice their attention drifting. You send a message and feel no urgency behind the response. You walk into the room and nothing changes. No excitement. No interruption. No emotional shift. Just familiarity. The frightening part isn't rejection. The frightening part is emotional neutrality. Because neutrality feels invisible. And invisibility creates questions people can't stop asking themselves. What changed? What happened? Why does this feel different? And that's usually where overthinking begins. You start analyzing conversations. Looking for clues. Searching for evidence. Trying to identify the exact moment things shifted. But attraction rarely disappears through one moment. It fades through repetition. Through certainty. Through emotional predictability. The tragedy is that people often respond to this by becoming even more available, even more attentive, even more predictable, as if increasing emotional access will restore emotional intensity. But something strange often happens instead. The harder someone works to regain attention, the more obvious the imbalance becomes. You begin replying instantly, checking notifications constantly, waiting for responses, watching for signs, watching for reassurance. Eventually you aren't enjoying the connection anymore. You're monitoring it. That's when attachment starts reshaping behavior. You stop speaking naturally. You start speaking carefully. You reread messages before sending them. You analyze tone. You monitor response times. You begin managing impressions instead of expressing yourself. And slowly something starts disappearing. Your authenticity. Most people don't notice when this happens. They simply notice feeling exhausted. Because performing emotional stability is exhausting when you're secretly anxious. The more someone's attention becomes emotionally important, the more dangerous their indifference feels. A delayed reply feels larger than it should. A short response feels heavier than it should. Silence feels louder than it should. The fear isn't losing the person. The fear is realizing your emotional impact is shrinking. Because everyone wants to matter. Everyone wants to feel noticed. Everyone wants to believe their presence changes something. But predictability slowly removes that feeling. You begin sensing it in social situations. You notice they laugh harder with other people. They seem more curious around strangers. More animated. More engaged. You watch them offer enthusiasm to someone they've known for 10 minutes while struggling to offer it to someone they've known for years. And suddenly a terrifying thought appears. Maybe they aren't emotionally tired. Maybe they've simply adapted to me. That thought is difficult to escape. Because it attacks identity. It makes people question their attractiveness, their value, their uniqueness, their importance. You start comparing yourself, comparing conversations, comparing reactions, comparing attention. You notice how quickly they answer others. You notice how interested they seem elsewhere. You notice how effortless enthusiasm looks when it isn't directed at you. Those observations create emotional humiliation most people never discuss openly. Because admitting it feels embarrassing. Nobody wants to admit they wait for attention. Nobody wants to admit they check whether someone viewed their story. Nobody wants to admit they feel relieved over basic affection. But people do. Every day. The frightening part is how low the emotional bar can fall. A simple reply creates relief. A simple compliment creates hope. A simple reaction creates excitement. Not because those things are extraordinary. Because scarcity changes perception. People notice absence faster than presence. Someone can be present for years without being fully appreciated. Then disappear for a week and suddenly become impossible to ignore. Because absence interrupts adaptation. It forces observation. And observation changes emotional awareness. The moment something becomes unavailable, attention often wakes up. Which creates one of the darkest realities of attraction. People frequently appreciate value most intensely after they've stopped seeing it regularly. That isn't romantic. It's uncomfortable. Because emotional availability and emotional appreciation do not always grow together. Sometimes they move in opposite directions. And most people discover this far too late. After they've already built their identity around being available. Around being dependable. Around being emotionally present. Then one day they realize none of those things guaranteed fascination. And that realization feels devastating. because effort seems like it should be enough. Yet attraction has never operated according to effort alone. People don't always miss who you are. Sometimes they miss anticipation. Sometimes they miss curiosity. Sometimes they miss the emotional tension that existed before everything became known. Before every reaction became predictable. Before every outcome became obvious. Predictability doesn't destroy attraction overnight. It slowly removes the reasons people observe each other. And once observation disappears, fascination often follows. Most people believe certainty is the final destination. But certainty often carries a hidden cost. The cost is attention. And attention is far more fragile than people realize. The moment someone stops wondering about you, something changes. The moment your presence feels guaranteed, something changes. Not immediately. Not completely. But enough. Enough to alter the emotional atmosphere. Enough to create distance without distance. Enough to make someone feel lonely while sitting beside the person they care about. And that loneliness is difficult to describe. Because technically nothing is wrong. Yet something feels missing. The absence of fascination. The absence of anticipation. The absence of emotional tension. And once people feel that absence, they begin chasing what used to happen naturally. Because nothing feels more exhausting than trying to recreate a reaction that once happened effortlessly. Nothing feels more painful than realizing your presence no longer carries the same psychological weight. Nothing feels more isolating than becoming emotionally familiar to someone who once couldn't stop noticing you. And maybe that's the quiet tragedy hidden inside attraction. People spend so much time trying to become indispensable that they accidentally become expected. And expected things rarely receive the same attention as uncertain ones. Not because they lost value. Because people stopped observing them. Familiarity kills observation. And observation is often where attraction begins. The saddest part is that most people won't notice this happening until long after the shift has already occurred. Until conversations feel different. Until attention feels different. Until they find themselves staring at a screen waiting for enthusiasm that used to arrive naturally. Until they realize they're trying to recover something they never actually saw disappearing. Because attraction rarely leaves with an announcement. It leaves quietly. One unnoticed moment at a time. And by the time people recognize its absence, they've usually been living with it for much longer than they realized. If this felt uncomfortably familiar, subscribe for more psychological explorations of human behavior.